All right, guys, welcome back to another Buckmasters Outdoor Podcast. We've got Mark Smith from ACES. And if you're not from the South, from Alabama, you probably don't know what ACES is, but ACES is an abbreviation for Alabama Cooperative Extension System. And I always want to say services, but what they got going on over there is really unbelievable. They cover a little bit of everything from deer to turkey to quail, even hummingbirds, your common songbirds, a little bit of all of it. So we love these podcasts that we're doing with them every quarter. We've covered bow fishing. We've covered a little bit on deer. This podcast, we're going to cover a little bit about the wild pigs, how they've affected the population here in Alabama and surrounding states from Texas to all over. It all applies. A pig's a pig. It does the same thing. But we're going to get into all the goodies of it and talk this with Mark because he is the guru here in this world. So, Mark Smith, thank you so much for getting on with us today.
Hey, Cody. I'm great to be here.
So, Mark, tell us a little bit. So, you work directly with ACES. So, tell us a little bit about what your role is there with them and what you do.
Yeah, so a lot of people are familiar with extension, the county offices and so forth. They historically, back old Green Acres, it's the outreach and the agriculture, but we're actually much more than that, branch into consumer sciences as well as forestry and wildlife. That's kind of where I am. My specific position is as a wildlife extension specialist. I'm a PhD, did my graduate work at Mississippi State University, and I'm actually on the faculty here in the College of Forestry, Wildlife, and Environment at Auburn University. And so extension is set up. We have several specialists, and of course, agents are within the region, as well as county directors here in Alabama. Now, every state's a little bit different, so this is how Alabama is structured, but and you get a broad base here, and so every state has an extension program. This may be structured a little bit differently. And so I'm 75% extension, 25% with the university. I'm housed here in the College of Forestry and Wildlife Environment at Auburn, along with all of the other forestry and wildlife faculty, and maintain normal faculty operations, except my primary role is extension. 75% of my day is spent taking the science that we do in academia, not just at Auburn, but any science in general, and specifically in this case, a lot of the wild pig science that's being done out there by researchers throughout the country and even internationally, and taking that information and boiling it down for the non-scientists to use, to take out in the field and actually use and benefit from. Now, that could be, from a management perspective, how best to manage pigs, or being aware of the impacts that they have on, say, popular game species such as turkeys or quail, things such as that. And so that's what really extension is. It's kind of interpreting science in a way that the non-scientists can understand, and then getting that information out to folks. And that could be done through, podcasts. This is a perfect example. In-field demonstrations, seminars, publications, YouTube videos, things such as that, getting that information out so people can actually use it and accrue some benefit from that to increase their livelihood or just well-being, really.
That's right. And you've been doing this since 2007, so I will say you are, like I said, the guru in this. And I just look at myself as the common redneck who likes to go and hunt them and try to eradicate them as best as I can, but all the in-depth details of them I don't necessarily know. So that's what I'm just we're gonna play this as if I don't know, because I don't. And a lot of the audience who's watching this, the reason y'all are here is to gain a little intel. And so hopefully I can ask some of these questions and Mr. Mark can answer those. So we discussed, what do we talk about today? We had talked about that. Do we talk about deer? Do we talk about pigs? And it just seems like wild pigs have just truly taken over. They've taken over my personal property here in Alabama. Honestly, just made it to where it's not even enjoyable to deer hunt. It's a constant fight. You take them out, and here they come back. It's like, but let's start at the root of this. I want to know, because I've always been curious, where do they come from? I mean, I hear they come overseas, and and then they get out of pens and they breed the Russian boar versus the domestic. But I'd love a little bit of insight on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, our earliest records that we have is Hernando de Soto in the mid 1500s. Brought pigs across, of course, when he was trekking through the southeast region and so forth. And if you think about it, the pig's the ideal animal. Very, very hardy, very adaptable, tastes good. They reproduce quite rapidly. And so if you're new to an area, a whole new country, and you want to have insured food supply for the next time when you return, a pig's the ideal animal for that. Okay, and so they were dropped off, and of course some of those were, obviously were domesticated pigs. They just didn't grab a wild pig and bring it over. Those are likely domesticated pigs for the most part. Of course, over the centuries, though, we've also had pig agriculture or swine agriculture and so forth. And if you think even back in old American history, free-ranging domestic pigs. Now, not all of those will get picked up. Some will be left. They'll go feral fairly quickly. And so you had little populations from that. And so even since, the 1500s, we've had wild pigs in North America. So they are a non-native species. Let's clarify that. Okay, they're not from around here. Although they've been here for a while, they're not from around here. They're non-native species to North America. And so, those populations existed in several isolated patches here and there throughout the southeast. They get spread around. They move fairly slowly. Natural movement's fairly slow. But it's probably about maybe 40, 50 years ago when folks start figuring out, hey, these are a cool game animal, man. They're fun to hunt. Their eyesight isn't that good. Hearing isn't that good. Smelling's really good. But it allows, especially bow hunting. You can get within range of pigs if you play the wind and noise and so forth. And they're fun to hunt. There's no doubt about that. And so that kind of started kicking off, 40, 50, 60 years ago, and folks realized, well, hey, here's another sporting opportunity with these animals, these wild pigs. Right. And so that really created a culture of folks live trapping wild pigs, transporting them to other places that didn't have them, and releasing them. Mainly for hunting purposes, more than anything. Where you're chasing them by dogs or stalk hunting or whatever it is mainly for hunting purposes. And of course, once they get established with their reproductive rates and so forth, and their adaptability, those populations just start exploding, start growing. Okay, there's no real natural predators now. We have mountain lions here. Coyotes really don't bother them all that much. The only real predators they have are two-legged predators, hunters. And so, there's that small segment of the hunting population that, thought this was a great idea. And again, I'm trying to put myself in their perspective back then. Yeah, it makes sense, It
does. Now, I grew up Mississippi, in North Mississippi. There wasn't swamps. There wasn't really anything that held them. And that seems to be and we can maybe speak on that, of why they like those type of environments. But we were in the hills. We didn't have pigs. And I always, as a little kid, I was like, man, I'd love to be able to shoot a big pig with big tusk. And, it was like, I wanted to do it. And when I moved down here to Alabama, it was like, okay, once I shot one, a pig's a pig. It's not like a 140-inch deer. You have different, unique traits of that deer, and it's fun to hunt a deer. It's totally different. But I will say, once you shoot one, you shoot. They're all about essentially the same. But I will speak to that. Like, they are not fun to have on your property.
And so getting back to that, they're fun to hunt. People, that population starts spreading through to live trapping and translocation to other areas. And then once they start getting widespread, we figure out, well, gosh, these things aren't all as much fun as we thought they were, especially for those people who own the land and are experiencing the losses to croplands, to food plots, competition with native wildlife. Now we've done a lot of work here at Auburn as well as elsewhere on these animals, water quality issues, things such as that. But at that time, they're still spreading these pigs around for hunting opportunities. And so more and more that damage is occurring, more we're realizing, that wasn't a good idea. And so now you see a lot of states, though, have outlawed the movement of live feral swine or wild pigs, whatever you call them, same animal. And specifically here in Alabama, you cannot do that. Any pigs that are captured in a trap have to be euthanized within that trap, and any pigs that are bayed by hounds, another popular hunting technique, have to be killed on site.
Right.
You can't be moving these animals around, and many other states that have pigs have similar types of laws, rules, regulations regarding that to really put a hamper on that movement, because we realized it really wasn't a good idea. It sounded like a good idea 40, 50 years ago, but now where we are, it's not good, because all the damages that they do cause.
The damage is, like you said, it's just so bad, and the only predator they have is two-legged people. I've seen coyotes get the piglets. I mean, that's a very rarity. I mean, you have a bald eagle that could potentially, but other than that, you're not getting a red-tailed hawk. I mean, there's nothing else. There's literally nothing else unless you have black bears in the part of your state. But yes, it's terrible. And they're, like you said, I look at them as an oversized armadillo, honestly, because you can sneak right up to them. And best methods of trapping is, killing them, getting rid of them is trapping or night hunting. And it's interesting too to see. Even the wildlife, fish and game, they don't even have regulations necessary on them. It's just basically kill as many as you can and as often as you can. There's no season, which should tell you just how bad and rampant these things are.
Here again, I'll speak to Alabama because that's where we are. But in many states that have a pig problem, there's no closed season on them. Shoot as many as you want. Special permit, shoot them at night, shoot them over bait. You can probably run them over in an ATV if you wanted to.
Right, yeah.
And with pretty much no restrictions on them, they're still overpopulated.
Right.
And that's a problem. That should give you, folks a heads up that, we're dealing with a little bit different animal here.
For sure. So one big question a lot of people have is, what damage are they doing? So let's cover that, and just how bad that is to the other populations or native species. So non-native, as we know, is what they are. They're not supposed to be here. God did not put them here on this dirt. They were brought in. So a deer, a deer or a quail or any other species that's out there, how is wild pigs? How are they harming them?
Well, let's take crop damage, for example. Deer do cause crop damage as well, and we're seeing some increases there. There's some issues there I think we still need to get resolved. But wild pigs, much like deer, probably even worse, they're an omnivore. They're going to eat anything they get their mouth around. Mm-hmm. And obviously all the different crops that we grow throughout the United States, soybeans, corn, peanuts here. Peanuts a big one here in the southeast part of the state. They're going to usually at the front end at planting, they're going to go through, get those peanuts, or at the tail end when they're getting ripe and ready to come out of the ground, they'll take them out, for example. Or when corn is starting to silk out, that's when they'll get into those cornfields really heavy and start knocking down those corn stalks and having lunch. And that's a problem. And we see predation on crops by deer as well. The problem with pigs, though, is there's so many more of them, mm-hmm. creating that same type of damage. And again, getting back to that reproduction, potentially up to 2 litters per year. Wow. About 4, 6 to 8 piglets. Where compare that to, say, a white-tailed deer, what people are very, very familiar with, 1 to 2 fawns per year, mm-hmm. Maximum. We're dealing with an animal that has such a much greater reproductive capacity or rate.
And deer have a lot more predators. They have a lot of other things, as diseases and coats and everything else. They're more prone to that, to death. But that's a good point. And then the success rate of those 4 to 6 piglets, it's about 100%, would you say?
It's pretty good. That's kind of one where our size gap is right there. What piglet survival is. From best we can see, it's fairly good. As you mentioned earlier, not really a lot of things are going to get them. And if you watch them close to a mama pig, they're staying pretty close till they get kind of big, and then they're still traveling in that family unit, mm-hmm. and makes it a little bit more difficult for a coyote or a bobcat or something, or a black bear to take one. Although it does happen. It's just not at the rate that we would like to see it happen.
Right.
Obviously. But the crop damage is the most observable and one of the most important types of damage that we see that pigs do. And of course, we can quantify that. That's in the several millions or tens of millions of dollars in each state. Whether again, here peanuts, corn, soybeans, things such as that. All those crops, grain crops, as well as fruit crops, tomato plantations, so forth. If you move further south, wherever you have growing something, these animals are going to eat it. And again, a lot of that's been quantified. That's fairly easy, somewhat easy to do to get reasonable numbers, because we can interview producers and farmers. Hey, what's your loss and so forth. But there's a lot of other damages or interactions that we see which aren't as easy to measure, which we're really starting to get into now. We're seeing a lot of funding from USDA. Specifically, they have the National Feral Swine Damage Management Program, which funds a lot of research. Of course, management operations through Wildlife Services. USDA Wildlife Services are another key partner in this management paradigm. And for example, just some of the research we've done here, acorns.
Yes.
It's a very simple study on acorns. Everything likes to eat an acorn. It's a very important food item in the fall for a lot of our game species, white-tailed deer,
sure.
Turkeys, squirrels, and so forth. But from what we see, or I've seen from some of the research, about a quarter of those acorns be consumed by wild pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's a direct competition on a food resource.
And I'd say, too, and you might help with this, Mark, but a deer or a squirrel, they're getting a certain amount of acorns and they're moving. I don't know the verbiage you would call that, but whether they're grazing, would that be the term, foraging, versus a pig is going to come in and he's going to just eat till he literally has nothing else in front of his face. Is that correct to say?
Yeah, I think so, pretty much. Obviously their sense of smell, they're going to root down into the soil as well, but of course they're picking acorns off the top.
Right.
They're a greedy gut. They're going to eat as much as they can and then move on. That's part of the issue too. But another one is just competition for space and habitat. Mm-hmm. And this kind of gets into some of the research we did recently, looking at the impacts of wild pigs on turkeys. Mm. And, all the matter is, those wild pigs got to be eating all the nests.
Right.
Well, that's not really what we saw where the problem is with turkeys. It's more of a displacement of turkeys off of a property with wild pig activity.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that, because I've always heard that wild pigs eat the eggs. They scavenge the nests, and
yeah, they will.
And I'm just curious though to that. So you're saying essentially a pig will run off the turkeys. They don't want to be around them. They want to go to the next property for the most part.
Or the turkeys are like, this is just not right.
Yeah,
okay?
I don't like
and again, we did some work. We had some graduate students. My colleague Steve Ditchkoff here does a lot of deer work, but he also does a lot of wild pig work. We brought in Brett Collier, one of the leading turkey researchers, on some of this research. And Brett's radio collared a lot of turkeys over the years in areas where there's pigs, and they just really weren't detecting nest predation by pigs. It happens, but not at a rate that you would think it would to drive the population down. A pig's going to eat a nest here or there, right. But they're not eating 30% of the nest or 10%. Right? It's a rarity, what they found.
That's good.
And so that led us, kind of wondering, well, what's this relationship? Because we had some old anecdotal data, some work that I did with USDA Wildlife Services on a few properties, that whenever we had a big pig control event during the summer, the hunters would see more deer in the fall and more turkeys following spring. They'd have better hunting. Mm-hmm. Okay, and of course we don't. Well, that's great, but why is that happening? That's why we try and get to that research. Obviously, it's not reproduction at that stage, because it's going to take a year or two for reproduction to change.
Right.
And so that kind of spurred on a whole series of investigations, figuring out what's going on. And so we started radio collaring turkeys, radio collaring pigs, doing pig removal, and really found there's definitely that linkage there, that when we have an area that has pigs and a few turkeys, there's going to be a few turkeys there. Mm-hmm. But when you go in and hammer those pigs, hammer them, if not pretty close to complete eradication off that study site, turkeys start moving back in. That's
so true. You saying that, it really makes me think back on our property that we have in Brundage, South Alabama, where we've done that. I have a trap, and I'll catch 15 to 20, and I'll try. I think they're gone. And then that next 2 or 3 seasons, it seems that their turkey population seems to pick up. But I don't see young poults. I'm seeing just big birds come in, like they're just coming back into the areas because I guess they're feeling more comfortable. But as soon as those pigs move back in, it seems like they do disappear. So there's something to that. And I want to go back to something else too. I'm just curious if you know this number because, like I said, I trap. I have my trap and I trap for some people in my own place and stuff. And one statistic that the guy that I got the trap from, he was telling me, is Hog Ball Systems out of Louisiana. He said that it's a statistic that I don't know where he got it from, what university or what, but he was telling me that one single pig can do up to $10,000 worth of crop damage and agricultural damage in a single year. Is that true, or is that about right in a ballpark figure?
I think it depends on what crop you're dealing with, where you're at, density of other pigs around. It seems a little bit high per pig,
right?
But I wouldn't doubt it. I'm sure it happens at that rate somewhere, somehow. Somebody's losing that amount of crop to one pig, or maybe that sounder unit, that group of pigs that kind of moves around. Right. That could be very reasonable. And again, is it a big farm, small farm, right, things such as that kind of all come into play. But that losing $10,000 by a farmer is not unheard of.
Right.
That's reality in a lot of your farmers, even your small farmers, or even your large farmers. When you have pigs around, losing $10,000 of crops is not nothing. Sometimes. That's probably low end of damage, really, in a lot of cases.
And it's something you don't think about whenever I'm driving down the road. I pass a peanut field or a cornfield, and it's like, looks pretty good standing. But when you get out in there in it, and you can see the damage, and you start adding up, if you ask these farmers, it's up there, and it's kind of depressing. I mean, they already have enough that's going against them from weather, not getting enough rain, or getting too much rain, or and these pigs, they just root. I've seen them go down one single row of corn and just every single kernel, just pop them up before they're even really germinated. It's crazy the damage that they do. And like you said, just across from people, from the agricultural side, but also just to squirrels, acorns, to just briars, to blackberries. I want to say blueberries, blackberries, everything else that's native and forage here in the South. So they do damage.
Yeah, another thing that's concerning too, some research that folks have been looking into the past 5, 6, 7 years, or a little bit longer than that, but more so I think recently, has been water quality.
Wow.
Okay. If you think about a pig, summertime, they're going to find water. They're going to wallow in there. They need to cool off, because they're not sweating. They need that evapotranspiration. Of course, while they're there, defecation and so forth. The amount of E. coli that we find in some of these streams where we have pigs is way past EPA. It's way past EPA levels, to the point where you really got to start thinking twice about even stepping foot in that water.
Yeah.
And again, we've seen that. And the importance of that is pigs are not just a farmer issue or a forest landowner issue or whatnot. Now, you start talking water quality. Of course, that water goes downstream to other properties. It goes into a reservoir. You have other issues there, drinking water, potable water. And so, when you start looking at the concentration of E. coli, for example, in areas where you have high densities of pigs, it goes through the roof. Mm-hmm. And of course, we've seen through some of those same studies that when you remove the pigs, those systems eventually recover. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so that makes it from not being a farming issue or a hunter issue. Now it really becomes a public health issue.
It does.
Really, at the end of the day, when you start looking at the broader impacts.
Why would you say that is that they, I covered that earlier, but why do you think that they like these? Is it because of the mud? It cools them off. Is that why they like these lower lying areas, these water swamps and stuff? I know that they rub the mud on them to keep the bugs and ticks and different things. But can you speak on that? Because I'm curious about that, because it seems like you don't really see a lot of pigs in the hills or in the higher terrain.
Yeah, well, let me preface all this. If you take a look at the range of wild pigs in North America right now, we've got them in South Florida doing just fine down there. We've got them in California and even some drier parts of California, doing just fine out there. We've got them in Missouri. We've got them, wherever. Okay, all 37 states or whatever they say, whatever the current number is, and they're even in Canada. Canada never thought they had pigs until they figured out they had pigs. Okay, where it gets very, very, very cold. Okay, yeah. So that gives you some idea of just how adaptable this animal is. Now locally, you do tend to find them by water. They need to thermoregulate there. Of course, you think about a lower stream, river bottom, harbor bottom. They're shading trees. It's much cooler. You're closer to water. You can get into that water, jump out, cool off that way. And so in the summertime, you typically find them more closely associated with water, okay? But you also see a little bit of seasonal movements too. During the wintertime when it's cooler out, there's, of course, down here, we get rain later. Hopefully get some today. But during January, February, we got rain. There's more water accessible elsewhere, but it's also cooler. They can range farther, and you'll start seeing more shifts to other areas of the property as well.
Right. I mean, everything needs water, so it all correlates together. But it definitely, I think that's what makes them so just bad. Is just they're so adaptable. Like you said, I mean, they're in Mexico. They're in the driest of it down there, and then they're up. Now I didn't know that in Canada. I mean, and in South Florida. I mean, they're all over, but and can you speak to that, because that is something I've always been curious about. Say 50 years ago, how many states were pigs in? Now you're saying roughly 37. How many would you say 50 years ago were there pigs in? Was it 10? Was it half that?
It was probably more than 10 states, 15, 20 states, so something like that. If you start going back into somewhat recent history, but then we start seeing these little patches here and there. You find them up in, northern Michigan.
Right.
More pigs get up there. Well, they're put up there, Wisconsin, New York, Pennsylvania. Now, some of those populations have been around for a while. A lot of it was that hunter relocation, but if you go farther back in history, the game farms, game preserves, folks, they were game around the true Eurasian wild boar, same genus species, being brought over and put in a confined hunting area. Of course, they have escapees and so forth. And those may cross with domestic pigs and whatnot. And so, we've had them around. It's just that although they're there, the increase in distribution has been dramatic.
Right.
That's
and it's really dramatic, like you said, and honestly, it's concerning to me, like big time. And I'm just curious, what's your take on it, and kind of from your studies? I mean, where do you see the next 50 years? I mean, do you see them in all states? Do you see them just completely taking over and just about in all? I mean, because I cannot tell you. I mean, hundreds, and I mean it. Hundreds I've taken off this 230 acre property that I've got, and it's probably 2 to 3 miles from a main river. It's kind of up in the higher portion of the country. I mean, it's not lower lying. I mean, they're just demolishing it, and they're coming in. I'll take them out. Here's 10 more. It's like, it is so hard. But where do you see it going in the future? Like, where are we going to head for pigs?
That's hard to say. That's hard to predict that far out in the future. I can say, again, I circulate in the Wild Pig Research and Management Policy Committee. That's the arena that I operate on. We've seen a lot of successes, though. Smaller scale successes. Probably the best one out there is the state of Missouri. Missouri Department of Conservation, their efforts working with a lot of their stakeholder partners to in that case, trying to eradicate wild pigs from that state. Okay, they're state, federal partners, and even NGOs that they've done. They're probably the shining example, really, of statewide level pig removal, a concerted effort with a lot of agencies, and they've significantly reduced their pig numbers. I can't remember what the latest state numbers are, but the range of pigs in Missouri has significantly shrunk, and so that gives the rest of us hope that if it becomes a problem, people want to start throwing money at it. It's a problem then. And so there's a lot of states as well. Federal, USDA Wildlife Services is a big partner with these states in doing wild pig removals. Okay, of course they do a lot of other human wildlife conflict work. And so, yeah, I'm hopeful. Will pigs be completely eradicated from North America? No.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
That will never ever happen. And just look at it from the practical side. There's people out there that love them, want to keep them, and will never ever get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people who don't even know they have them, and don't want any control on their property. So you're going to have, at least in the eastern United States, patchworks of that, different objectives in terms of land ownership. Now, you mentioned your property, and so others. Can you have localized control, localized eradication? Definitely. It takes a lot of work, okay? And in your ability to do that kind of varies where that property is. You mentioned every year you're killing hundreds of pigs off a couple hundred acres. There's some pipeline that's feeding them through.
That's true.
It could be a habitat corridor where they're moving through, and they just have to be normally moving, and they stop off at your property.
Right.
And so, for you on that property, it may be a never-ending battle. And unless your neighbors start doing something too.
Yeah, and that you're so right there. And the term that you say, and like I want the audience to hear, is eradication. Like, to get rid of them off of your property, that's the best way to do it. Eradication. Like you taking a couple here, there during deer season and at night, but I want to cover the way. How can you eradicate? What's the best way to eradicate? And I know it's hard, obviously, to say you can't 100% eradicate. I found that out myself. But the best way is trapping. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And if you don't mind, speak on, if there's any sort of government funding, if there's anything that people can do, because traps are expensive. I mean, you're talking $5,000, sometimes up to $10,000 for one trap for the whole cellular system, for the type of corral trap system you need to catch the whole sounder. So I'd like to talk a little bit about trapping. How can people go about finding them, and any sort of funding that they can get?
Sure. As you mentioned, I think you nailed it perfectly. In a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, your most cost and time effective means for managing pigs, i.e. removing pigs, is going to be through trapping. Some type of corral trap where you can catch that, what we call sounder group, that family unit that's moving around, try and catch them, get them all into that big size trap, and the door shuts, and of course the pigs are euthanized in that trap. Okay, and that's probably, in most cases, for most landowners, going to be the most cost and time effective means for managing pigs. And again, one of my colleagues in Texas, former state director of wildlife services down there, Mike Bodenchuk, he said it best at one of the meetings we were at. He said, "Look, this is not a problem we're going to be able to barbecue our way out of.
That's a good one.
Shooting one pig here, one pig there, it ain't going to cut it. In most cases, with most property, you got to go, and you use this pun, whole hog on your pig removal. Okay, and usually that's where the trapping makes it much more efficient. Rather than trying to shoot one here, shoot one there, you're kind of educating pigs. In the process, they get harder to hunt down at that time versus, we can catch a whole group at one time and boom, we're done with them.
Right.
And now in terms of the trapping, there's several different traps out there, and all of them are good. I often get that time extension. Well, what's the best trap do I need? Do I need the one that swivels and falls down, or do I need the metal one? Do I need the net one? Or can I make my own? Yeah. You need a corral, a circular corral that's big enough that's going to hold pigs. Right. And again, there's a lot of great manufacturers out there that make excellent products, and there's pros and cons to each one. Probably some of the key things, though, that you'd want to make that process more efficient is game cameras. Okay, and everybody get them, and they're fairly cost effective. Obviously, the ones that shoot that stuff in real time to your iPhone would be ideal. So you can start monitoring what's coming into that trap, what's going out of that trap. Yeah. Okay, that pre-baiting, conditioning going in and out of that trap. And then also, some type of camera system to allow you to activate that trap. If you have one that's a closed door, or the new net trap that they have out, works great as well, where pigs kind of root up under the net, they get in, but they can't get back out. That's another great product as well. But you still need the camera on there to know when the pigs are in there. Right. Yep. And so using that technology to your advantage really makes us more cost and time effective. Yep. The other thing is a broadcast feeder. We have those for deer hunting. run it 20 seconds, spill out some corn, put that feeder inside that trap, spill out some corn. They got corn in there every day when they show up. They're comfortable going in. They can even leave. Let's get them all comfortable. Let them think the trap is your friend. And then when they're coming in good, they're conditioned well, close the door on them, and boom, you got them.
And it's discipline on that. Like, it's so hard for, I've run a cell camera on mine, and you have to wait for that whole sounder. I mean, there's been so many times that I've got a group of 12 pigs, and there's 11 in there, but I know there's one. I'm like, I know he's here. He's not in there yet. So you wait till the next night, wait till the next, and you have to do that. It's so important. And it's I think they're both equally as important, a boar or a sow. I like to take the sows. I feel like they're the ones that's obviously reproducing more, so I like to get them, especially the bigger reproducing sows. I like to take them out. But most definitely have discipline to be able to wait it out for them all to get in. And, another thing, like you said, building, one thing that I've found is pigs can jump. They can jump over traps. I've learned that. I will say they can't jump, and you might speak to this, 4.5, 5 foot. I've got my trap. It's about as tall. If they want, they can get over it. I've had them completely clear it. But the main thing that I've learned, and I've had it happen, is the corral system. If you are building your own trap, have it to where it is a corral, where they hit it and they literally circle, because if a pig can get in a corner, and I've had this happen, they'll get up in it and they will literally inch theirself and use their left right until they work theirself out of the trap and go over. It's crazy. And then your gauge of wire is important. I use those hog panels, those big from Tractor Supply, and you can T-post, and I do them about every 2 foot is what I do on the outside. And, those corral systems I've built, but there is cost-effective ways you can do it. I've even done the stick and string, where they root up the string and then it drops a homemade door. Those are effective. You're not getting the whole sounder, but there's a lot of things you can do. And it at the end of the day, it is fun too. It's something to do to get out there, but I will say trapping them is the best. But when it comes to government funding, is there any sort that, Alabama does for that, like say to help for that cost of a trap?
They come and they go. Right now, currently in our state, Alabama, Soil and Water Conservation Committee, you would have a rebate or a cost share type deal on traps. I don't know their funding availability currently. USDA, Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS has one. I think it's maybe an EQIP, where there's a little bit of funding there, not necessarily for a trap, but trapping supplies and equipment and monitoring, things such as that. Probably the biggest thing, which has just recently lapsed, was the Feral Swine Control and Eradication Pilot Program. This was money which came out of the 2018 Farm Bill. It was equally split between USDA Wildlife Services and USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. I think I can't remember the total amount. It was $37.5 million, I think, into each group. Wow. Wildlife Services was doing removal. NRCS then subcontracted out with state partners to work with landowners and work with Wildlife Services to do pig removal. Here in Alabama, that partner with NRCS was the Soil and Water Conservation Committee. And they had a trap reimbursement program. I think it's like 90% reimbursement for traps. And so things such as that, offer opportunities for folks to get in the game, if you will, with trapping. Now here, and again, the next Farm Bill provisions and funding, that may happen again as well. So, I'd encourage everybody to keep your eye out on that. Right. That's why I'm familiar with here in the state of Alabama. I think Mississippi might have had some type of trap program as well. And so, it's going to vary from state to state, and even, obviously agencies within the state. But there, at times, at least what we got through that first round of the Feral Swine Control and Eradication Pilot Program, that was first out of the 2018 Farm Bill, that put a lot of money down in the states for wild pig removal.
All right. I guess bottom line is,
there's hope.
Yeah, and just check with your local state. I mean, just wherever state you're in, just check. I mean, call and check, whenever you are about to drop that much money on a trap, because it is a hefty penny that they want for them, because there's a lot of material and it's a lot of equipment too. So that's interesting. I learned a lot. I know a little bit about it, but I'd say that answers about all the questions that I have on wild pigs. Is there anything we're missing?
I'm sure a lot of folks probably heard about poisons for pigs.
Yep.
The use of toxicants, modern day term toxicants. That's always a question that comes up. There's two, not competing, but two possible alternatives. One of them was actually EPA registered and state registered, I think, in Texas and Oklahoma right now. That's kaput feral hog bait. That's a warfarin bait or based bait. And warfarin is a blood thinner, anticoagulant type of deal. I think Texas and Oklahoma are the only two states that have state registered it and are using it. There may be another one coming online, but that's always another option, at least for those folks in those states. But it's got its challenges too. It's not you just pour it out and pigs come eat and they all die.
Right. It's
got to be properly dispensed according to EPA standards, registrations, label, if you will, and a specific hopper, and there's nuances to it.
Right.
The other one too that folks have been working on, the USDA National Wildlife Research Center, has been sodium nitrite. Again, that was a product that was used over in Australia. Kind of work with those folks, bring that technology over here. And again, you just can't do it. You need some good science behind it, so we can do it safely, apply it safely. And it was looking good for a little while, but we also started seeing there are some non-target species issues, and so they're still working on how can we still deliver it to minimize or really eliminate that non-target issue.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of really good research that's been done by the USDA National Wildlife Research Center to see, can we make this a reality on a landscape? And again, they're tools. It's not going to be silver bullets that sprinkle this out and they all go away. They have to be carefully applied. Right. You don't want to misuse any of those tools and then subsequently have them taken away from.
Exactly. I hope I've heard of that too, and I do hope that technology. I hope all goes well with that, and that's something we can see in the next upcoming years, because that would be game changer. I think it would be definitely more effective than a trap, which is about the most effective way right now, but for sure. Well, good deal, Mark. I thank you so much. I think that answers everything, and as y'all know, just drop a comment, drop something in the comments, or email us or get with Mark. I know y'all are easily accessible, so any questions y'all have, just ask away, and we'll be happy I can reach back out to Mark if I don't know. But I think that concludes it for all of our questions that we have. But you answered all the common redneck questions I have, so I thank you for that. And then thank you for getting on today. So, but that concludes it for another Buckmasters Outdoor Podcast. Thank you guys for getting on, and thank you again, Mr. Mark, for getting on with Aces and helping us with this. So y'all have a good one. We'll see you on the next one.